Hi, everybody. Welcome to Third Space Live. I'm Jody Peel. This is a show that offers conversations, ideas, and stories around mental wellness. In a few moments, I'm going to be introducing you to my guest, Melissa Berry Appleton. But before I do, I want to remind you that you can find information about the charity at thirdspacecanada.org. You can follow us on Facebook or Instagram or on YouTube. Today's September 9th, 2020, and this is episode 32. Today, we're going to be talking about women, wine culture, and the choice of sobriety. Now, it's well understood and accepted that any use of substance plays a big part in mental wellness. And we understand that's a massive conversation. Today, we're going to take just a slice of that conversation and talk specifically about women and alcohol and explore the choices some women are making around living sober. I'm going to introduce you momentarily to Melissa Berry Appleton, who's part of the Third Space team. She's also well known in our community as a yogi, a meditation instructor, and a somatic movement educator. Melissa is a past executive director of the Enzo Society of Contemplative Engagement. She's most recently completed her Master's of Divinity Studies and is now an ordained Buddhist chaplain. She's also worked in women's recovery in the past, as well as music and recreation therapy. Melissa is a regular on the show, so I probably don't have to introduce her like that every time. But Melissa's also, I'm privileged to call her a friend, and she's also the mother of 3 children. So welcome, Melissa.
Thank you so much. Good to be here again.
Great to have you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to kick off this conversation with a few hard facts that you can help me flesh out, and then we'll have more of a conversation after that. So you and I worked on this before we aired the show, collected a few key statistics. So one of the foundational pieces we wanted to share with the viewers is this, that although men still tend to drink more and more regularly than women do, there are gender differences in our body structure and chemistry, which cause women to have a different relationship and reaction to alcohol. So women absorb alcohol differently. It takes longer for our bodies to break it down. It also impacts us and has a higher influence over us. And the alcohol lasts in our system longer. And all these differences make it more likely for women to suffer health problems related to alcohol use. I'm going to add that alcohol abuse disorder in women has increased almost 84% between 2002 and 2013. Anybody interested in getting the sources of these statistics, please reach out after the show. High-risk drinking is defined as more than 3 drinks a day for anyone, and health risks arise with women with more than 1 drink a day. Women's abuse of alcohol is on the rise. One study says between 2001 and 2013, there's been an increase by about 58% in over-drinking by women. Melissa, you're going to speak specifically to some of the health impacts of alcohol use in women.
Yeah, I mean, the big 3 really is alcohol affects the brain, the heart, and the liver. And even more importantly to note, and especially this year, because there's been some really extensive research come out this year about the correlation between drinking and breast cancer. And actually the research shows that with just 1 drink a day, so 1 drink daily drinking for women actually increases breast cancer by 5 to 9%. Which is pretty extensive considering how much movement has happened for women's breast cancer over the past 20 years.
Yeah, it's a huge concern. I think too, I was really surprised when we did some research for the show, is that ethnicity also plays a part with women and drinking. So here's one of the stats. 71% of white women become heavy drinkers at some point in their life. Black women and Hispanic women, that number is less, it's 47%. And again, with Asian women, it's only 37%. So this is particularly problematic for white women. Surprising.
Yeah,
Maybe
that's
not so
really,
surprising.
yeah.
Surprising. So the next point we wanted to make was to acknowledge what's happening culturally and socially, that, you know, here in Canada and elsewhere in the world, this whole idea of wine culture and mommy wine culture. Researching for the show, there are groups on social media with names like Sippy Cups Are for Chardonnay, Moms Who Need Wine, hashtag Wine Mom, a book that's entitled Mommy Drinks Because You Cry. I mean, granted, I'm a funny person. I get the funniness of it, but at the end of the day, this is actually a significant health issue for women. And it's when you look at it through that lens, this tendency and this growing cultural phenomenon around making memes and jokes and having it funny that mommy's drinking all the time isn't so funny, maybe.
Right. And the fact that a lot of the marketing target is related to stress, that it's an antidote for us to deal with our day-to-day stress.
Yeah. One of the women in one of the articles I read coined this as drinking, and particularly drinking wine, has become a mascot of motherhood, which is very interesting to think about.
Right.
And I was part of that. I was one of those mascots or whatever for a long time. So I'm not judging. We're just setting out some foundational pieces here. The other piece we wanted to raise was that it's interesting that we aren't paying more attention to the health aspects of drinking in women. And Melissa, you were suggesting that part of that might be because it's overshadowed by global politics, by the opioid crisis, by the legalization of marijuana.
Yeah, sometimes I think that alcohol has gotten a little bit left behind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And because it's such a huge part historically of our culture, that could be a big role as well.
Right, right.
And one of the, I mean, this wasn't the place we were going to talk about this, but interesting that you brought up that idea about dentists and liquor stores.
Oh, I know. I mean, there's been all kinds of crazy things going on during the COVID period. But I couldn't help but notice there's this one morning, I'm on my way to the grocery store. It's 10 o'clock in the morning, and there's a massive lineup down the sidewalk. And I thought it was for the grocery store, and it actually was from the liquor store, like 3 stores down. And I had to cut through the lineup at the liquor store to get into the grocery store. And there were a lot of things that weren't accessible to us that had a really good impact on our wellness during COVID. And yet we were able to purchase alcohol at a liquor store during that time.
Yeah, so essentially it was treated as an essential service or an essential,
Yeah,
when things like dentistry, we had to wait for quite a few months to get back in and see our dentist.
right, right.
And what does that say about the values or our priorities as a culture and as
Right.
as leaders?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The other thing that you and I have noticed is, and it's anecdotal, but I think there's probably data there somewhere. Maybe we'll get to that in the future, but more people seem to be exploring choosing sobriety for a short period of time or a longer period of time. There seems to be more of it on social media. There seems to be more people talking about it in our community. Do you want to speak to that at all?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to that as a person who's been choosing sobriety for over 22 years, and when I entered sobriety, I mean, we were kind of told to keep anonymous, to keep hush about things, to not talk about things publicly, not even to talk about things with our friends. That really, if we wanted to talk about our sobriety, we should only talk about it with other sober friends. Or
Well,
with
this is one of the underpinnings actually of the AA structure, right? Anonymity is actually part of their name.
Yeah, exactly. And the truth is, nobody was talking about sobriety publicly at that time. And we were told not to do this because we could set ourselves vulnerable, that the drinking culture was so strong, it was considered a form of sickness or illness, that we would be putting ourselves vulnerable to judgment and to more shame if we were to talk about it publicly. And today, it's just so amazing to me that I know more women now who are sober than I ever have before. I know more women who are talking about it, both amongst their peer groups, casually and publicly. And of course, I'm seeing tons of things just in like famous people talking about sobriety, which we never heard about before, or seeing things through social media, people talking about their sobriety. And this gets me super, super excited.
I'm excited too, and we can speak more about our personal stories later, but I should probably mention that I'm newly sober for the third time in my life. It's been 13 months. I have a long, ugly history with alcohol, and there's a lot of family history with alcohol. So both of us are choosing sobriety right now. And the next step point we wanted to make was that choosing to try out sobriety, choosing just to explore what sobriety is and what it might look like, let alone living sober, is a choice that every single one of us have in front of us.
Yeah. Yeah, we have the choice to choose. And the other thing is that when we make a choice, it's not like we have to make the choice for the rest of our lives. It's nice to just think about making a choice every single day when I wake up. Because the truth is, I don't know what's coming. Sometimes we make mistakes. Sometimes we fail, even though our culture sometimes doesn't put a nice light on failure. Failure has a lot of fruit in it. And the thing is, the truth is, every single day I can choose to get up and start all over again.
Yeah, and that was important in terms of the shame that's connected often to making a plan and then the plan not working out, whether it's sobriety or something else. But, you know, statistics are clear that often in terms of someone who's trying to recover from substance use, it can often take many, many, many attempts before
Yeah.
you reach a long-term.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
And that's
right.
okay. And that's part of the journey and can almost expect it. So by exploring this, nobody should be frightened or fearful of shame because hopefully that won't be part of their experience or shouldn't be.
Right. I know, because it's really horrible. If you choose sobriety and your peers know about it, your community knows about it, and you've accumulated like 2 months of sobriety, and then you have a slip, right? And you're out in public. It's just horrible when somebody comes up to you and says, "Oh my God, I thought you weren't drinking. What happened? Did you fall off the wagon?" Uh, like
Yeah.
it's a horrible experience, right?
Uh-huh.
And the truth is, it's actually just a human experience, right? It's like, yeah, well, tomorrow when I get up, I'm going to start all over again.
Right. I think we wanted to make sure that people who are listening and people who are curious about sobriety realize that the question that that historically I think we ask ourselves, people who are actually contemplating sobriety, my understanding of historically the question was, do I have a problem with alcohol? Am I an alcoholic? That was the question people asked. I shouldn't be drinking if I'm an alcoholic or if I have a problem with
Right.
alcohol. And what we're going to suggest today is that that's the wrong question. The right question to be asking is drinking impacting my life or my health negatively? Is my drinking getting in the way of my dreams or the life I want to live or my goals? Is my drinking negatively impacting my relationship with my family, my children, my spouse, my friends, my community? What do
Yeah.
you say about that?
Yeah. I mean, it used to be that maybe we had this idea that we had to be like a fall down drunk in order to have a problem, that we would have had to lose our job, to lose our relationships, to lose our kids, to lose our homes, to be categorized as somebody who was really in trouble. I don't think that's necessarily the case. It happens to some people, but there's this broad spectrum of what might be considered unhealthy drinking. Um, and it's true, like, why do we need the label, I'm an alcoholic? Why is that possible? Why is that so? Why can't it just be, you know what? this is really not working for me. In fact, God, I can see how this is impacting my health and my relationships, not in a devastating kind of way, but in a way that there's actually parts of me that can't be expressed, or parts of me that can't live to their fullest potential. I'm not achieving the things that I want to achieve and living the life I want to live, being the kind of mom I want to be. I can't participate. I feel like I'm living in the shadows of my own life. That's enough. That's enough. And that could be like 2 glasses of wine a day, Jody. This could be the woman who really just comes home and has 2 glasses of wine a day and feels that they're getting in the way of their potential and the way that they can show up in this world.
It just occurred to me while you were speaking, Melissa, that answering that question, why we've looked at the question should be, am I an alcoholic and do I need to stop? As opposed to, is it impacting my life?
Yeah.
In a way that I don't want it to. That's really in line with the theme of the personal work I've been doing by looking at, okay, I'm going to base this on a test of, am I an alcoholic? So what you're doing really is looking outside of yourself, looking to our community and looking at some old diagnostic tool really to say whether giving your power away to someone else to decide whether or not you should be drinking or not, as opposed to looking at your inside, getting in touch with yourself and being open and honest with yourself and saying, wait a sec, I know best. I'm the expert about myself.
Yeah.
Is drinking a problem or not for me?
Yeah.
And in what areas? I'm thinking about the 2 glasses of wine a day. I've been that person for a long time, usually more, but 2 glasses a day is just enough that, hey, I lost my motivation to go work out after work. I lost my motivation to be as engaged with my kids' homework as maybe I should have. I lost my motivation to take on that art project or do that thing that I've always had on my to-do list that I never can find the time to do. You know, those types of things are worthy of exploring. It doesn't have to be, I'm losing my house, I'm losing my kids, I just got fired, right? Do I have the same type of relationship with my spouse that I'd like to?
Yeah.
Those types of things.
Yeah. And sometimes it's like, it starts with 2 glasses of wine a day, and then it gets to be a slippery slope. And sometimes the slope progresses over a number of years, and we can't even see the slope happening, right?
Definitely. I guess the other statistic we haven't shared yet is, was it 17 or 18% of women in the last month state that they've done binge drinking. And that's been more my history and your history, I know, is binge drinking. And so that's the dinner party on a Friday night or the event on a Saturday night or whatever it is. And, you know, what is it? 3 to 4 drinks or more is considered under 2 hours is the definition of binge drinking. That's laughable to me and the circles of people that I traditionally socialize with, that everybody at the party, except for maybe Melissa, would have met that criteria.
Right. Oh my gosh. I mean, I just think about what my tolerance was like. My tolerance was unbelievable in my drinking years. I mean, I could drink 6 drinks within an hour and still function pretty well. So I was in that category of binging. And, you know, Jody, I've actually never talked about this really publicly. This is the first time. I can actually say that this morning, I had a few tears actually, because I had a lot of messages that came out to me this morning about doing this talk from women who are thinking about making the choice. And I really wanted to do this talk with you today for a lot of reasons. I mean, one of the reasons is just the process that maybe you and I have had in witnessing each other's process over the past 12 years that we've known each other. And then also, gosh, I got a call from a mom 2 weeks ago who has 4 teenagers, and she's a single mom. And she reached out to say, like, my drinking hasn't been awesome over the past couple of years, but during COVID, it's reached a place that I just can't accept anymore. And the first thing I heard in that call was an enormous amount of shame. And I mean, this is a woman who I would rank in the top 3 mothers I know on this planet,
Wow.
who shows up in ways that I can't even believe. And, so when I heard her shame, I was like, of course you reached for help. Of course you needed tools to help you as a single mom raising 4 kids, an income provider. It makes sense to me. And it's because you wanted to live, because you wanted to be able to do all the things that you're good at. And in one moment in time, she decided, God, it was good, and now it's not good anymore. It's just not working anymore. And I have to choose something different. There has to be something else.
I think I can speak to that in terms of more of my own personal journey, is that my paternal family history is one of alcoholism and really problems in every area of their lives. I grew up in a home where drinking was, there was a lot of drinking. And so, of course, as a teenager, what do? You do what you see, not what your parents tell you to do. So I started drinking, and it was modeled that you drink for emotions. You drink to celebrate. You drink when you've had a crap day, when you're stressed. I mean, drinking is the answer to kill any feeling you might have pretty darn quick, which is interesting. So even it's only in hindsight that I've really got clarity around this, but I think I was curious about drinking even in my early 20s. And like you, I was a binge drinker. I was somebody, maybe because of my genetic background, could drink a lot. I could drink a lot and actually black out, which means, for people who aren't familiar with that, I appeared normalish to people. I could carry on a conversation. I could carry on with the evening. Yeah, I might slur a bit, but I mean, I would have checked out early in the evening, and I don't remember what happens the rest of the evening. This is when I was younger and drank heavily, but yeah, so had different periods of time with sobriety, and knew for for decades that this was not good for my body. It wasn't good for me. It got in the way of things for me. But it wasn't until I had a few incidents that my tweens at the time started noticing my drinking and actually made a comment a few times, topped off by the final straw for me was my husband, who's very cool and chill with people drinking. He's not judgy about it, but finally felt like he needed to talk to me and said, I'm noticing some things that aren't great, and I think you should think about your drinking, and I think it's becoming a problem. It wasn't until my family, my kids or my husband told me that it was a problem that I felt like I had to do something about it. We talked about this a little in the pre-show. Self-esteem wise, I wasn't willing or ready to do it for myself. Maybe because I don't care enough about myself, or didn't care enough about myself. So that's interesting, that what the catalyst is to finally making that decision is different for everybody.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, no 2 people share the same drinking story.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the way that we express through our alcohol is different for everybody, and the way that we make the choice is different for everybody. The tools that we need for the path to choose sobriety is totally, totally different. I mean, the one thing that this is probably surprising for people, to hear this about you, Jody. I mean, it's very rare that, you're a prominent community member. You have done an enormous amount of contribution and work towards the mental health sphere in our community. You're a part of an upstanding family. You're a lawyer. Your family has a law firm. We would think that, and you're like a super high achiever. Most women would look at you and think, oh no, you have it all together. You must have exceptional confidence. You're the mom that everybody probably wants to be, or we think that we want to be, right? To have all those pieces in play. And it's probably pretty surprising for people to hear this.
Yeah, I think we all carry our secrets, and nobody knows anybody's background unless you're very close to that person, right? Yeah, everybody has stuff, and it's amazing how some things like, drug addiction to certain types of drugs is harder to camouflage and hide from people, because of the way our culture is and what's acceptable. It's easier to get away with problematic drinking and still meet the requirements of success in our culture. In fact, drinking actually is deeply ingrained in certain things. I mean, the legal community is a good example. There's a long history of drinking as part of the culture. It's changing now, thank goodness. But my dad was a lawyer back in the 70s, and he said everybody's offices, you had a full bar in your office, and you would offer cigarettes or a drink to your clients when they came in, right? And it was, the stories are notorious about, judges being drunk when they work, and 2-hour lunches over with 5 cocktails. I mean, that was part of the culture. So I think we're coming a long way, but the point is that, alcohol is something that a lot of us and a lot of women are able to hide. And maybe we're not even consciously hiding it, because we've bought into the social context of the role alcohol plays in our society, and we probably don't even think we're hiding anything. I felt like the example you just gave, I got through education, I married a great guy, I had great jobs, I'm doing an okay job as a parent. I would have never, for many years, I would have never thought that alcohol was a problem, because I was checking all those boxes.
Yeah, that was me too. That was me too. I mean, until the very end. But
yeah. So I'm mindful of time, and we can do many more shows on this, but I think it's really important, Melissa, especially because your background in women's recovery, if someone is curious about sobriety, there's a lot of resources out there, but what can they expect if they decide to try that out? What does it feel like? What's it going to be like? What can they expect?
Well,
it's different for everyone, I know, but
it's different for everybody. I mean, it's a little bit scary. I mean,
I think it's a lot scary.
A lot scary. The thing that I know about in the early days of choosing sobriety for myself is that I was really detached from my body. I was really disembodied and unaware of how I had been treating my body and how much I had been numbing for so many years. So when I started to get sober or make the choice not to drink, I felt really vulnerable. And actually I had a lot of grief come up, because the friendship that I had with alcohol wasn't there anymore. I didn't have a crutch anymore, and I felt super, super raw.
I've been there and share that was exactly how I felt too. What I realized when I stopped drinking is that I had no tools or skills to regulate my emotions. There's a larger story there for me personally, and we're all different, but I hadn't realized how much I was using alcohol to manage my inner experience, my inner life.
Yeah.
And I realized I didn't know how to do it.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah, me too. I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you who know that I practice yoga, and most formally teach meditation and practice meditation, but like I couldn't even lie on the ground on my back with my palms turned up towards the sky. It was just excruciating me to feel what it was like to be in my body and to be still. So and the other thing was that I really didn't have any friends like outside of my drinking culture. So I was really alone. I actually kind of wondered before I decided to quit drinking, if I quit drinking, I don't even know who I'm going to be or like what to do.
So that's what I was referring to a large extent when I said this is very scary.
Yeah.
It's social implications of not drinking.
Yeah, like it sounds really easy just to make the choice to stop, but actually it's like a massive existential crisis, right? So, I mean, I I came into 12-step recovery. I was so desperate to be sober. I had really hit a wall. I'd had a whole string of really bad incidents really, really close together that were totally humiliating and shameful for me. I also had my boyfriend, who then became my husband, his mom had a really heavy drinking problem. And I just had this one moment where I looked at her and thought, if I don't get my life in order, I'm going to become her in 30 years' time. And this was a woman who was super, super brilliant, super educated, a medical professional, the most generous person I know, who had really lost everything. And actually is still alive, but I mean, the path and trajectory that she has taken is totally devastating. So I didn't want to be her.
And interesting, you're really speaking to one of our points, which is that the impetus or catalyst, that magical formula of when someone is ready to try this out or explore this is such a mysterious thing. It's completely having the right set of circumstances. You're in the right place in your life. You talk to the right person in the right place at the right time, and you're ready. And for you, I'm thankful for your emotion there. That was a turning point for you.
Totally.
That revelation.
Totally. And then, sometimes we think that we need a professional, like the best professional there is, the best addiction counselor, or the right treatment center, and they've got to get everything right to be able to help me. But actually, it is mysterious. Sometimes it's the person that you least expect who says the right thing at the right time in the right moment, and all the light bulbs go off, and all of a sudden you're ready. I worked for a lot of years in a residential treatment center as a counselor with women in recovery. And truthfully, Jody, that's the story that I heard over and over again. Sometimes it was 5 rounds of treatment, and a woman would say, it was when this woman said this in this moment that all the lights went off, and my whole life totally turned around.
Yeah, and that's really important. This is my third time with significant living, making I don't even know the language yet because it's still so new, but choosing to live sober. I had a 1 year-ish time in my 20s, another 1 year-ish time in my 30s. This time is totally different because of that, all the different factors, all the moons are lining in my life in a certain way. And it's important for people to realize who are exploring this that it's typical actually to try this out a lot of times, and that the goal shouldn't be permanent sobriety. The goal should be a choice every day and keep trying. And maybe you go back to alcohol for a while and then maybe you try again. And it's kind of like a yoga practice or a meditation practice. It's about the journey and the practice, right? Not the destination.
Yeah. I mean, I chose not to hold my anonymity from a really early stage in my sobriety because I felt like being silent was never going to be of service. That if one woman out there could hear my story and know that she could pick up the phone and talk to me or meet me for coffee or tea, that actually connection is our biological imperative for healing and recovery and good living. Being able to share our stories and know other women in recovery is actually what's going to change the culture. We have to talk about this in order to change the culture. We can't wait for alcohol companies to stop advertising us and targeting us. We can't wait for even the mental health system to save us. We'll have to be a part of rewriting the story. It's super, super important.
Yeah, and the way to do that is to talk. I do want to add here, and I don't want to make you cry or me cry, but you've been a lifeline for me in this most recent sober time in my life. And I want to share with everybody how meaningful it was for me that on July 26th, 25th, that was my 1 year. the July that just passed, and you were away camping with your family, and I was somewhere, and you made it your business to reach out to me and connect with me and congratulate me on my 1 year. Nobody else did that. My husband didn't do that. None of my friends did that. My family didn't. You did that. And look, I'm getting all choked up. That meant so much to me. And having community and other women that you can talk to and connect with in this journey is critical. And it's funny, just the two of us talking about this sometimes, I know it's impactful to other people. Just the fact that we talk about it and they're listening. So it's a powerful thing to support one another and to talk openly about it.
Totally. I mean, I have a lot of friends who are counselors. I've spent a lot of time working with clinical counselors, just professionally. And, you know, the people who really understand and know the choice to stop drinking are the people who have actually done it themselves. There is like such fellowship and camaraderie in the body of people who are walking the path. Mm-hmm. It's one of the tools. There's so many tools that we'll need to be able to keep going in this direction.
So we wanted to talk a little bit about the whole idea of collecting sober days. And we wanted to talk a little bit about how everybody's experience with sober living is different, because we all come from different places and we all have different influences and factors that impact our lives. Maybe you could speak a little bit about that.
Yeah. Sorry.
Sorry, I got you going. It's my fault.
It's just amazing, like 22 years later, how I still get so choked up about all this. Yeah, collecting days. So that's the goal, is to collect days. We don't know how long we're going to live. I can't tell you how long I'm going to live. So it's hard for me to say, oh, I'm going to be sober for the next 30 years. My goal is just to be sober for today. And it's like I was saying at the beginning, none of us need to pile on any more stories of shame, right? If we slip or if we make mistakes, we don't need any more of those stories. So you just collect them one by one. You know, if you collect 100 days of sobriety in a year and 265 days of those are drinking, that's better than none at all. And my encouragement would be like, be willing to fail and just keep going, just keep going. And the truth is, like, I've known you for 12 years, Jody, and never once in the process of those years did any judgment ever come to mind. I can't say that that's my own demeanor that created that. That was instilled in me through the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. We were trained from a really early entry that there is no judgment, that the door is always open, no matter how many times anybody has to walk through. And there is no judgment, only a welcome.
I love so much about AA, and I explored it in my 20s, and I never chose to dive deep with it. We have spoke about this, you and I, preparing for the show as well, but I think it's super important for people who are exploring sobriety to consider going to a meeting or two, because what I learned through that experience many years ago is you go in there feeling uncomfortable because it's new and different. You don't know what to expect. You don't know these people. And you go in there, particularly from how I was going in there as a young person on top of the world, in doing some pretty hardcore studies, kept keeping my life together, and I thought, I'm different. I'm not like them. You go into a meeting, no matter where you go, unless it's a pretty specific group. Most meetings have a large spectrum of different types of people there, and there will be people who are high functioning. There'll be people who are struggling. There'll be people maybe who are homeless. The different levels of different stages of their addiction. And what I came away with, the big gem there, was that after I heard other people speaking, I realized that I'm exactly the same as them. The only difference between me and any of the other people in that meeting was either circumstance, a few good choices, maybe a privilege, but that I could be that person. uh,
Yeah.
any time, because at the end of the day, when they started sharing their stories, there was this kernel that was similar to all of us. So that's a pretty cool thing in terms of the AA
Totally.
piece.
I mean, some of the most brilliant people I have ever met in my entire life are in those rooms.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say that I agree 100% with the whole philosophy, but I can say that they totally saved my life. Um, and, you know, they saved my life and helped me take the vow that when any person ever reaches out for help with addiction, that I will always be there in service, ready to lend a hand, because so many people did that for me.
Yeah, that's
And
amazing.
then I would say I have a magic number, and my magic number is 5 meetings. So, really important to go to 5 meetings. You don't have to stay forever, and you don't have to believe in everything they're saying. But how could you not go and learn something? There will be something in every single meeting that a person can learn. And the other thing is it's not the only thing that's needed. You know, I mean, um, the yoga studio that I teach at Moto is full of people in recovery, like just full, who say that yoga has saved their life. There's something to be said about an embodied practice, about learning how to get back in our bodies, because we've learned to numb our bodies for so long. It's amazing to get back into the body and to learn how to feel the body, both the pleasant sensations and the unpleasant sensations, how to be able to stay with it, to breathe with it, and to learn how to self-soothe.
Yeah, I think that we see often people switching out addictions, right? So people
Yeah,
who decide to go into recovery then become workoutaholics
so
or
that does happen.
workaholics, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and so the recovery process actually never really ends with just choosing to stop drinking. Sometimes it's like, oh yeah, I can feel how I kind of transferred this, and then 5 years later, it's like, oh, I can kind of feel some of these tendencies that I have that are in my fridge and my behaviors around my fridge and my tendency to overexercise, or here's like some of those maladaptive behaviors showing up in my relationships. So it doesn't always just end with when we decide not to drink. It's this massive long path, a kind of pilgrimage until the end of life, of being willing to look at Melissa and all of the crazy, bizarre things that I do as a human being because of all the causes and conditions that I live in and the history of my life that I grew up with in my community and my family and the genetic makeup, all these things. It's like the greatest exploration of your life.
I, that was so eloquently said. And really, it can be an opportunity for self-development and self-evolution. Um, and
Yeah,
it's important to also, I think, to make sure everybody realizes that based on where you come from and all those factors that influence you as an individual, you might need a lot of other things to be successful with your sobriety. For me, I needed a lot of counseling. I needed to do that. I needed to educate myself on a lot of things. I needed to do a lot of work on myself. Drinking wasn't the problem. It was, I was drinking because of a lot of other problems. So I had to do a lot of work. And you and I spoke about this morning a bit. Any type of big change like this in your life, you often want to have some supports, obviously, whether it's friends or it's professional supports. You also kind of want to develop a plan based on what your needs are, right?
yeah,
A typical wellness plan might include healthy eating, lots of sleep, some exercise, community connections. Volunteering is a great way to get people connected and feeling good. You might need to see a therapist. You might need to do
yeah.
some journaling. What else do you have to say about that?
Oh gosh, you listed off a lot of them, you know. I guess the thing is also it's not going to be wrapped up in a year, right? Like, and we never really arrive. I guess that was the piece you were asking about with stacking up days or accumulating days.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm not, I don't want to use the word cured because that would mean that I'm saying that I'm ill, but it's not over. It's not over. I'm still choosing. I still have a toolkit, Jody. Um, and my toolkit has gotten bigger since the first day I chose to be sober. And I use those tools all the time. Um, and sometimes they're shifting and changing, and they're different for everybody.
Yeah, I've noticed that too as I go through different phases of life, aging, with my friend relationships, my marriage, parenting, what I need changes, and
Yeah.
where I'm at changes. So then what you need changes. So yeah,
Yeah,
continually changes.
totally.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'll never know all the reasons why my drinking was problematic. I don't know. I could say, oh, it's because, genetically my background is First Nations. It could be because I'm adopted. It could be that my parents were children of alcoholics and had all the isms, all the, like we didn't have great social emotional behaviors in my home, even though my parents were awesome and I grew up in a good home. I also have like a really incredible anxiety. I have a wild relationship with anxiety and the way that I experience it. Um,
Same. I do too. Well, actually not right now, but 50 years of it. Yes.
yeah. And interestingly, in my first 5 years of choosing not to drink, it got way worse before it got better.
That's good.
Way worse. And I had to use a lot of tools. Like I had massage therapists, chiropractors, yoga, which I really did not want to go to. Like for 5 years, I didn't want to go to yoga at all. It was excruciating for me to go. I did a lot of hiking, a lot of long distance walking. Sugar has a massive impact on me. Um, it's just like learn these things about myself as the years roll out, and I still go through bouts where anxiety is something that I have to work with more intimately. It's not like I stopped drinking or chose not to drink and all of a sudden all the bad stuff went away. The cool thing is that I'm awake now. It's more painful to numb out than it is to face it directly. I know that now.
Yeah, my experience is that it's a short-term thing. You numb out, but then when the alcohol wears off, you're in the same place as you were to begin with, and sometimes worse.
Sometimes.
Sometimes you're hungover, or a lot of times you're hungover, or maybe you said something to hurt someone's feelings, or you disappointed someone else, or you disappointed yourself. So, yeah,
Yeah. The thing,
it's
the
not
thing,
helpful.
it's not helpful. The thing that was most profound for me in recovery, in choosing not to drink, was that, and this might sound so obvious to most people, but like, I didn't realize that sensations were not permanent. Like, I didn't realize that when anger came, that it was only temporary and that it would actually move and pass away. Or that when I felt really awful, that it was not permanent. I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm a late bloomer. Maybe most people are born knowing that, they grow up with that. But like, I feel like I didn't really understand that until 3 to 5 years of choosing how not to drink.
So, Melissa, that
Good.
idea was one of the key factors that led to my ability to finally do this. And this might have happened 7 years ago for me, that I finally learned this, that emotions can come and they will eventually go. You don't have to do anything, and that
Yeah,
you can survive them.
I don't have
I'd
to.
never done that before. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was taught in my family unit that when you have a strong emotion, you do anything you can to get rid of it. You distract yourself, you drink, you exercise, you work, you whatever. Like, just sitting there and experiencing a negative emotion was terrifying. But
Yeah.
then you realize that, first of all, it will eventually go away, and you don't have to do anything to make it go away. It'll just, it's like, I have this print in my house, it's waves. And that was what my therapist taught me, that emotions are like, if you're sitting on the beach right at the water line and you're just sitting there doing nothing, and the waves will come up and they'll come over you, and then they'll go away. And that, what am I don't have to do anything. The waves are just going to do their thing. And that's what emotions do to you. And when I got that, I was like, wow.
Yeah.
One of those catalysts, right?
Yeah.
Crazy.
So amazing.
How can you not know that until you're 45 years old? I don't know.
I'm a late bloomer. I always have been a late bloomer.
Now, look, I'm mindful of time.
Okay.
I want to wrap this up. We can come and talk about it more. I wanted to end by saying that we're only two people with two stories, and there's a million other stories, 7 billion other stories out there. And it'd be great to have some other women who might want to come and join us and talk about their story.
Yeah. Yeah. I would like to talk to other women about their stories. And I want to know, what are your questions? Like, for people who are listening out there today, what are you curious about? What do you want to know? What kind of questions do you have? What do you want to hear? Who do you want to hear from? What are the challenges?
Yeah, and maybe even tips of what's been helpful, not only as individuals, but maybe within our community as well. The specific resources and opportunities here in our community.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, and I feel like this is just the opening, just the like big step over the threshold to opening up the conversation, Jody. We've talked about doing this for a long time now. I could feel like the kind of nervousness rallying over the last 24 hours. And I even felt like, oh God, we could pull out of this so easily and just drop the whole thing. But we, here it is, it's out there now. And I'm kind of curious what might come of this.
Me too. I have a long history of outing myself and my family. So here's another step, but I think it's a powerful thing to do, and I'm proud of you, and I'm proud of myself for taking that leap. And I can't wait to talk more with other guests as well. So thank you for joining me, Melissa.
Thank you for all your courage.
Right back at you. Thank you for your ongoing support and friendship. Join us next time for more amazing conversations like this one at Third Space Live, Thursdays after 5. Learn more about the charity at thirdspacecanada.org, and thank you for watching. Have a great day. Thank you, Melissa. Bye for now.